Joes, shining the spotlight on the G.I. Joe Steadicam machine gunner Repeater, courtesy of a Patreon special missions request from Muji. He was released in the 7th wave of the Real American Hero line in 1988. Some other codenames that were considered before settling on Repeater were Grazefire, Reaper Man, and Mower. For Joe fans who checked out after 86 and the end of the Sunbow run, I know a lot of you say, with some exceptions. I'm sure Repeater is one of those exceptions. More military than sci-fi. He'd fit right in with the early year releases. But he's got just a touch of the future with his Steadicam gun. No doubt inspired by the weapon the Colonial Marines Drake and Vasquez used in the 86 movie Aliens.
Let's rock!
He's got a desert camo look with beige camo, but the green vest lets him blend in with forestry or jungles. His cap doesn't have any text on it, but the card art shows Ranger written on it, so Repeater is one of the Joes that leads the way. Ranger had been listed as the specialty on previous Joe's Stalker and Beachhead, so it's interesting that he's not referred to as one on his card. The accessories had grown quite a bit by 88, but another throwback to the early days is Repeater only includes 3 accessories: a machine gun, a stabilizer arm, and a backpack. One of the more modern additions to Repeater, though, was the clip on the side of his hip that the stabilizer arm attached to, which would then attach to the machine gun, allowing Repeater greater control when opening fire on Cobra. Now that's a shot James Cameron would be proud of. The card art shows a coiled cable connecting to the stabilizing arm, but it was omitted from the figure. Repeater doesn't appear on either the Sunbow or Deke animated series, but his file card provides some insight into his character and history. Thanks to 3D Joes for this high quality scan. Codename Repeater, Steadicam Machine Gunner. File name Therian Jeffrey R. Primary military specialty Infantry. Secondary military specialty Heavy Weapons. Birthplace Cumberland, Rhode Island. And his bio reads, with close to 20 years in the Army, Repeater never got any higher in rank than E6. His performance in the field was always top-notch, but he could never hack it in garrison. He's not a barracks soldier, and never could be. But send him out in the bush beyond the farthest base camp, and you'll find that he's the one the other grunts want to soldier with, because he's the one who's going to bring the grunts back in one piece. And the quote reads, "Being the machine gunner is probably the toughest job in an infantry squad. Number 1, he's got the heaviest load to carry. Number 2, as soon as he starts firing, the enemy knows where he is and becomes their primary target. Number 3, the squad depends on him to keep firing through all of this to provide maneuvering cover. Your machine gunner should always be the strongest, most stand-up troop you have." Since he doesn't make any animated appearances, you can usually count on the Marvel G.I. Joe comic to feature some original stories. But he doesn't make very many appearances in the comic, and of those, only a pair are featured roles. One of them is his debut appearance, issue 82, Weeding Out, which features him on the cover, about to get stabbed by a Cobra Viper. This issue was first published in January of '89. The issue starts with Duke training some new recruits, sounding a lot more like Sergeant Slaughter than Sergeant Hauser from the animated series. After a vigorous weeding out process, only 3 make the cut: Lightfoot, Repeater, and Budo. Repeater's ecstatic to be a real American hero. The trio are given a steak, roast pheasant, and lobster dinner to celebrate. But it's Repeater's experience that makes him suspicious about the warm reception after the freezing cold invitation. Sure enough, shortly after hitting the bunk beds, they're deployed on a mission. Budo and Lightfoot are instantly convinced it's a real mission, but Repeater, with his 20 years experience in the Army, is still skeptical. Once they touch down, they're led by another Joe who got no screen time on the show and very few comic appearances, Grand Slam. They hear some fire from a distance, which Repeater believes is also part of the charade. But then Grand Slam is shot in the back, cutting the trio off from communicating with the rest of the Joes and incapacitating their leader. Repeater assumes command based on his seniority, and with the Cobras closing in, is starting to believe this might not be a simulation. He lays down the lead with his Steadicam machine gun while trying to stop a truck filled with stolen high-tech weapons from escaping. It seemingly gets away, but then explodes thanks to Lightfoot's planted time delay mine. As they evacuate, Budo asks Repeater if he still thinks it's all a setup. Ever the skeptic, the old Ranger thinks it's still possible some info was purposely leaked and Destro was played, since one of the Vipers had an Iron Grenadier uniform on underneath. He pops up again in issue 89, manning the big gun on the mean dog. He's nothing more than a trigger puller in this one though. Again in issue 93, the famous Snake Eyes Unmasked issue, where he doesn't do much again. In issue 131, he's fighting alongside the man who handpicked him for the Joe team, Duke. Special Missions issue 19 is his other sort of featured role, where he provides cover fire on board a Tomahawk and shoots down an enemy chopper. And a few more comic appearances here and there, but nothing substantial. Some other appearances he made in art in 88 though, is on the box art for some G.I. Joe vehicles. He's manning the machine gun on the Desert Fox and Warthog, the giant cannon on the Rolling Thunder, and the double machine gun attack pack. Nice bit of continuity having this heavy machine gunner be the one manning these heavy machine guns, instead of randomly picking someone else from 88, like Budo or Lightfoot. He was sort of the poster boy for G.I. Joe in 88 as well, appearing on a number of different licensed items, like this puzzle, party supplies, and a bubble bath container. And you know what being the Joe's poster boy for media and merch in the 80s gets you? Jack and Squat.
And Jack left town.
Just look at what it did for Grunt and Falcon. Not much. So it's nice to be able to shine a little more light on this cool Joe who slipped through the cracks, or is often written off for simply being a later Joe. A Ranger leading the way, a heavy machine gunner providing trustworthy cover fire, and an elder that the team can count on to keep a cool head when the fire rains down. And since it's one of Muji's favorite figures, I'll also mention the Night Force recolor that was released the following year in 1989, in a 2-pack with Charbroil as a Toys R Us exclusive. Same body and accessories, just different colors. He got a modern Night Force version in 2014, part of a convention exclusive set, and the Collectors Club put out a modern figure in the original 88 colors in 2015. Thanks to the amazing advancements in toy technology, his cap now says Ranger. Unfortunately, he doesn't include a Steadicam machine gun, which is his whole identity. Might as well make short fuse without a mortar, zap without a bazooka, or blowtorch without a flamethrower. Sometimes the accessory is more than an accessory. It's an identity. That's why some figure accessories go for so much on their own. Some characters just don't seem right without their trademark gear or weapons. And a Steadicam machine gun is a must for any incarnation of the Joe's rock-steady Ranger. Hoping that the G.I. Joe Classified design team keeps this in mind, if they ever get around to making Staff Sergeant Therian in the 6-inch scale. Thanks for watching, and until next deployment, Yo Joe!